Welcome to Pandemic Ponderings. Hello, I'm Rick Jordan. When God created humankind, according to Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, God blessed them and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it." By the time we get to Genesis 11, however, there is not much interest in filling the earth to scatter around the earth, making people, or taking care of the whole world. People wanted to stick together and focus on, themselves. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as they migrated from the east, they came upon a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top to the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we shall be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth." The Lord came down to see the city and the tower which mortals had built. And God said, "Look, they are one people, and they all have one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. Nothing that they propose to do now will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language there, so that they will not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them from abroad, from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. This is a fun little story. It was used to explain how different nationalities and languages began, and to explain those towers that were in the middle of nowhere and how they came to be. And there is humor here also. God trying to figure out what those teeny tiny human beings were doing way down there on earth. Can you hear God's fake panic attack as he says, they'll be able to do anything now? And storytellers have had fun for thousands of years, adding details to how one person could no longer communicate with another person. Language is important, and it's difficult for us if we cannot communicate with one another because of the barrier of different languages. Here's a little funny video I think you might enjoy about that.
Das hier ist mein Sektor. Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät, das Küstenwächter. Das hier ist das Überlebensradar. Mayday, Mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you... over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
It's a fun story, but it is a serious story too. Verse 7 says, "They will not understand one another's speech." And we normally take that to refer to the creation of many languages. But what is interesting is that the Hebrew word here phrase is lo shema. Lo in Hebrew means without or not, like how we use the letter A, as in asymptomatic, without symptoms. They used the word lo. And Shema, that's a very important word in the Jewish faith, because there is a passage in Deuteronomy that Jews quote regularly that is key to their faith, where the word begins, Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is one. Shema means to listen, to hear. In his commentary on Genesis, Miguel de la Torre points out God confuses their language so they can no longer hear one another. It is not so much that people cannot hear and understand one another's language, but rather that they stopped hearing or listening. Lo Shema, without listening. Even when we do speak the same language, we have a hard time listening to the other person, don't we? Not listening and not wanting to listen is a kind of social distancing that we have been cursed with for a very, very long time. Did you know that the story of Babel was once used by preachers to prove that integration was bad, evil even? Listen to this sentence from the 1954 book that's entitled A Christian View on Segregation. The confusion in Babel was an act of special divine providence to frustrate the mistaken efforts of godless men to assume the permanent integration of the peoples of the earth. Many of us are uncomfortable being with people who are not like us. That has been amplified in recent years as we have had such anger and such division and such lo shema, not listening. Even short phrases shut down our communication at times. For example, make America great again. Without a conversation, this saying can be ignored and the person saying it ignored. But what if I were willing to listen to what is behind that phrase? The grief and the fear of the speaker. Black Lives Matter. If I choose, I can not listen, lo shema. I can shut down that conversation by replying, all lives matter. But what if I am willing to listen to their story of how their Black life has not seemed to matter? The temptation is to babble, 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 particularly with people who babble like we do, and not to Shema, Shema, Shema. Listen, listen, listen. Of course, there is a time to speak. But in his book, Life Together, Dietrich Bonhoeffer says, the first act of loving is listening. To love your neighbor, listen. 2 questions to ponder. 1, do I love my neighbor enough to listen, really listen to them? And 2, what small step could I take to listen to the griefs and fears and hopes and joys of someone who is very different from me? Thank you for joining me for Pandemic Ponderings. I hope you'll join us again next week, Wednesdays and Fridays. Thanks for joining.